What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about black people, but especially light-skinned and biracial black people who date interracially, swirl, and have children with people who are outside of the black community, right? And the way I feel about this is, if you have a child, particularly if you're a light-skinned person or a biracial, mixed race person, and you have a child with someone outside of the black community, I think you and your child need to stay outside of the black community. And I think some, light-skinned and mixed race people kind of do that to sort of go outside of the community. But some of them, some light-skinned folks, some mixed folks want to do this, right? Have a child with, like, say, a white person especially, but then turn around and say, oh, my child is black, right? For some reason, I see that happening a little, not often, but I see that coming up from time to time. Like, say, Halle Berry, right? She's done that. Go outside in the community, have a child with a white man, and then want to say that her child is black, thus pawning off her child on the black community, thus perpetuating colorism within the black community, as if we don't have enough problems to deal with in the black community, right? And we could put Quincy Jones on the list too. We can put Quincy Jones, Paula Patton. Those are the ones I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there are more. But yeah, I'm like, okay, well, why not? Like, if you want a black child, why not have a child with someone who's black? Yeah. I know that's a crazy idea, a wild idea, a ludicrous idea, right? Like, if you want a black child, to have a black child with a black person, right? That's crazy. To these people, it seems that way, right? They want to bring their, like, 25% black children to the, back to the community, because I guess white folks ain't accepting their children, or either they afraid to say that their children are white, right? So I'm like, you couldn't find a black person to have a child with. I'm sure that Quincy Jones, Paula Patton, and Halle Berry could have found black folks to have children with. I don't see them having issues in the dating department. I really don't see that. They made those choices, and why should we have to suffer for them? Those are their choices. They weren't our choices, right? I mean, I know that sounds a little harsh, but we gotta have some type of a standard, some type of a cutoff point. And I think that this kind of needs to be the cutoff point. And I guess this video is could probably be like sort of more or less like a continuation or a sequel or whatever to the previous video I did about in the case of white passing black people, right? But I'm like, okay, these folks, like, do they ever seem to want to say that their child is white? If you, like, the thing is though, like, white folks let you know. Them cave beasts will let you know that they will not be claiming their offspring or putting any claim to them. They will not be getting the white card. All right, they let them know, like, That's why folks don't even protest or advocate for that usually. They go for like the biracial category, right? And I think really that's what the biracial and mixed race and multiracial category probably needs to deal with more so. Like, probably like children who are mixed but perhaps white passing, mixed with like, you know, part black and majority white, or part this, part that, because it's not just white people, but usually, in the community, it usually seems to center around whiteness, right? And that's just historically it's been like that, to the point where even in the community, when you say mix, it usually comes to your mind like black and white, even though mix is a broad term, really, right? The person could be mixed with Native American, Asian, Middle Eastern, it's a variety of different mixes, right? And as well, I think the swirlers, and this is just black swirlers in general, need to be careful about who they're swirling with, because especially when it comes to like the women, because a lot of times when the relationship ends, the women get, they get custody of the children, and if you dating some like evil, anti-black, harboring, sentimental cave beast, they're going to put that into their children. They're not going to be like, oh, I need to check my anti-blackness for my child. No, they ain't doing that. Really, part of the time, a lot of times, the pregnancy probably happened by accident. Like, oh, they had some like BBC Mandingo fantasies, and then got knocked up, and now you have to deal with the result, the product of it, right? And also for the black women who be swirling, they need to be careful too. You know, um, I mean, I think when it comes to raising a child, since usually the mom has like a strong influence over that, like the ones raised by black women might tend to not have as much anti-blackness as, say, the ones raised by white women, but still, you know, the father does play a role in that, and you don't want to have to deal with an anti-black, having a child with an anti-black white man, right? An anti-black beast, right? And this video is kind of about more so like light skinned and biracial swirlers who want to go outside of the community, right? But I will touch on, like, say, the monoracial black people and them swirling. I think personally, I don't condone swirling, but at the same time, it's folks' business what they do across the board, right? Man, woman, light skin, dark skin, whatever. Ultimately, it is a choice, right? We have that choice, right? But I wouldn't be as hard, like, I'm probably not as hard on, probably the brown skin and dark skin black people who swirl, partially because I think, let's keep it real, they have more blackness to spare. Let's keep it real. I mean, we all check black and African American on our applications and our forms we fill out, but biologically speaking, there is a difference. Let's keep it real. We can do DNA tests and go, find out what the, how much blackness you have exactly, right? And in those cases where it's like the monoracial black person, right? The dark skinned black person, the brown skinned black person, right? They kind of have more blackness to spare. So while they are kind of like going away from the community, it's probably not as bad as when a lighter skinned person goes away from the community, because the child a lot of times they're not even reflective of any blackness usually, besides maybe like some curly hair, perhaps, a lot of the times they're like white passing, right? And that is a very complex situation, white passing, right? Because their parents are raised, their black parents saying they're black, but they're like, well, I look white and I'm being treated as white. Why can't I just be white, right? And then they're like, no, you're black. I'm black, so you're black. That thing, right? And then folks want to perpetuate like the one drop rule, and we like, haven't we dealt with that enough? And I see if this was like old school black people, I see kind of like a more so because they were under that law and that law was strictly enforced like back in the day. So I would maybe give them partially some slack in the past, but come on, this is a new day and age. Like we got new folks swirling around here, you know? And I just feel like historically black people have bared the burden of dealing with mixed people and having mixed people and biracial people step on their shoes. And we can't just turn around and have those same mixed people, biracial people, whatever, go outside the community and then create another group of people to come back into the community and step on the shoes, take opportunities away from us. Now, you know, I mean, slavery took a lot from black people as a group, right? It took a lot from us. You know, in fact, like that whole experience, it even took away like the blackness from a lot of black people, right? So I feel like why not go towards the blackness? Why go away from the blackness, then get a product from you going away from the blackness? Example given, having a kid by a white person and coming back to black. Why do you want to do that? Why not go towards the blackness, have a child, and continue to go towards the blackness if you want to be considered black and you want your children to be considered black? Why go outside the community for that? Because you got some people, white passing folk on YouTube saying, I'm white passing, but I'm black. There's a couple of women I could probably search for on YouTube, at least two. And usually I kind of see that a lot with the women, you know. But to be fair, there's some dudes who do it too, though. I think Jay Smooth is one. He does. But I do kind of see it seems as like the women want to be like, oh, I'm black, but the dudes, I don't know what the dudes. I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, if you are, light skinned, biracial, you need to be having a kid. I would say at most, the furthest you can go away from the community is just having a child, having a relationship, child, marriage, whatever, with someone who more or less has the same features as you, right? I would let that personally slide, right? But really, they probably need to be darker than a paper bag. Yeah, I took it there. The reverse paper bag test on y'all. Whoever y'all need to date, like whoever y'all getting with and wanting to have black children with, need to be darker than a paper bag. All right. If you want a black child, right? Shoot, go hit up some like Caribbean folk or some African folk. They got a whole bunch of blackness to spare, you know. And I do, and of course, there's light skinned folks who do that, right? Definitely, definitely. In the media, we can see that even, right? So, ultimately, oh yeah, and I guess I can speak on. I'll say Soledad O'Brien can be probably added to that list of, swirlers who want to be like, I'm black, but then go, white passing folks who want to say they black, right? Then go and have a child with a white person, and then be like, oh, my child is a person of color. And I'm like, well, you want a child of color? How you gonna have a child of color when you just barely got any color to your ass as it is, and your man sure don't got any color to his ass? So how you gonna have a black child, or I guess a child of color, right? How that's gonna happen? Curly hair? I don't know. And I should have given this disclaimer at the beginning of the video, but I guess I can give it now. These are my opinions, right? This is just how I personally feel. And, it's just how I feel, all right? And that's just my personal opinion, And I guess I can bring this video to a close. I think I made my point. So yeah, I think this video is more so towards the swirlers who are like light skinned and biracial, going outside the community, having kids and bring them back into the community, right? I feel like when darker skinned people do this, it's not as harmful because I think we as a community are used to light skinned and biracial people, right? But we're not as used to like white passing people, right? At least like they've been around and they have been in our community, you know, definitely, you know. But I think in this particular day and age, I don't know, I just don't feel like we need to be complicating the situation even more. I just feel like we need to be creating a standard for blackness that needs to be adhered to. And to be fair, some people may not agree with my standards. Some people may feel like, you know, the light skinned and biracial people need to kick rocks, keep it real, and just have like, you need to be at least like 75% black to be in the black club, right? You know, that could be somebody's opinion, right? But I feel like my standard of blackness is kind of fair to people. And as well, I guess this is changing topics for a minute, but I feel like, you know, if you light skinned, you need to be coming toward the community. Like, you know, that's a bit strange. Like, you can't be going away from the community, but then want to come back to community when you want your child to have an identity to claim, you know. Like, why you want to bring your kid back to the community now? And, you know, white folks, they ain't having that. If you black, like, if you look white and they find out you black, they're going to be giving you a whole bunch of slack. You know what's happened to Cleon Brown, right? That dude who found out he was like 18% black or whatever. Trying to sue folks now because I guess his coworkers are like emphasizing that 18% black now, right? See, like, white folks, they don't play that, right? And I know that we ain't white folks, we ain't no cave beasts, we ain't going around, you know, trying to destroy everything and snatch everything from everybody, right? I know we ain't like that, right? But I think sometimes we can kind of take a cue from people here and there. You know, what does Tariq Nasheed say? He says, you know, peep game, right? We can do that, right? So let me bring this video to a close. I think I'm doing pretty well, you know. This video's not too long, so all right. Thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. And feel free to give me a thumbs up. Feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.